Well, hello, guys, and welcome to the very first episode of Belle to Belle's Outside the Ropes with Kelsi. And that's me, I'm Kelsi, and I'm so happy to be joining you guys and talking this first episode about Seinfeld. I love that show, it's one of my favorite shows of all time, and I am super pumped to dive into that topic with you. And I hope you guys enjoy it as well. Some things that we'll cover in this episode, we'll take a look at some Twitter polls I did in the past, asking people who their favorite Seinfeld character was, and also their favorite Seinfeld quotes, as well as their favorite Seinfeld food bit. And I'm going to be joined by a very special guest star, which I'll reveal in a minute or two. But first, I want to talk a little bit about this show. What is Outside of the Ropes? What is it about? Well, it's going to be covering pop culture topics. And you might be asking, well, this is a wrestling website. What the heck does that have to do with wrestling? Well, guys, when your favorite wrestlers step outside of the ropes and leave the ring and drop their gimmicks, they like a lot of the same type of things we do. They love to watch TV and movies, they like to read books, they like to play video games, and many of them also enjoy reminiscing about nostalgia topics like, the 80s and 90s and pop culture from those time periods. So really, they like the same things we do. So here is where we're going to cover those type of topics. We might not always talk about wrestling, but we're always going to talk about topics that I'm sure people who love wrestling also like, and also people who actually wrestle themselves also probably like these topics as well, like I said. So yeah, I'm really excited about this show, and I've got to give a huge thank you to Kristen Ashley for giving me the freedom to do a show like this on a wrestling-based website. And guys, speaking of Belle to Bells, please hit that subscribe button on this YouTube channel and follow. Please keep up to date. There's great wrestling content being revealed on this channel all the time. Also, follow Belle to Bells on Twitter, please, at Belle to Bells. And that's Bells with Belles. So I'm very excited and pumped to get this episode going, so let's reveal some things, some surprises I have in store. First, this isn't really a surprise, but a very interesting connection. So I found out recently there was an SI.com article published that says that Finn Balor actually binge-watched all of Seinfeld during quarantine, during COVID times, and he absolutely fell in love with it. So there's a wrestling connection right there. A lot of people love Finn Balor, and hell, what do you know? He happens to love Seinfeld. But you know what? He's not the only wrestler that loves Seinfeld. A very near and dear wrestler to my heart, who I love because I'm a big Ring of Honor person. I was very much into Ring of Honor when I was super into wrestling. And he is one half of the wonderful tag team, the Bouncers. Brian Milonas! He loves Seinfeld, and he has graciously agreed to participate in this debut episode of Outside the Ropes. I'm so pumped. He loves Seinfeld. I mean, hell, he used to have a podcast called The Wrestling Podcast About Nothing. And of course, that name is kind of like an homage to Seinfeld, which a lot of people consider it a show about nothing. So there you go. Can't wait to hear all the different things he has to add. And we're actually going to go right to him right now as he tells us about why he loves Seinfeld so much.
I think the reason I enjoy Seinfeld so much is it's so relatable. The content is, one, it's simple. It's a very simple show to grasp. You can pick it up wherever. You don't have to watch it in sequential order. You can just enjoy the show. But really, it's all of the kind of relatable content.
We'll be hearing a lot more from Brian Milonas throughout this entire episode. And please be sure to follow him on Twitter at Brian Milonas. That's spelled BrianMilonas. And also, you can go to brianmilonas.com, and that brings you right to his very own Pro Wrestling Tees store. He's got a great shirt featuring him and Beer City Bruiser as two Care Bears with little beer logos on their belly. So cute, very old school, fun pop culture-y design. I have that shirt and I love it. So check out his store, support him. He's a great wrestler and a great person. And we'll hear more from him very soon. Now let's go to some Seinfeld facts and trivia. We're going to read some things, especially some of this trivia comes from a great book called Seinfeldia, and I really recommend that book if you're a huge fan of Seinfeld and want to know more behind the scenes info and little tidbits and fun facts. Another way to learn some extra information about the show and behind the scenes stories is you can buy the DVDs, and there's tons of bonus features on these DVDs. I have all the Seinfeld seasons on DVD, and it was worth the price because there's just so much bonus features on there, and I would also recommend that as well. All right, now this is directly from the Seinfeldia book. By now, the show has been off the air nearly twice as long as it was on the air, and yet it lives on like no other television series. It continues to bring in millions of dollars in syndication fees and advertising revenue every year. $3.1 billion total between its 1998 finish and 2014. In 2015, Hulu won an intense bidding war for the rights to the show, offering a reported $160 million to bring it to a new generation of viewers. Can you guys believe that? That's so much money. And really, it's still super popular today. So let's find out, why that may be. And we're going to go to Brian Milonas to hear what he has to say, his speculation on why Seinfeld holds up.
The reason why the show, I think, is so popular still today, one, again, it's relatable. Two, it just touches upon, like all of us, everyday life is made up of all these little moments that add up to the big picture. Everything is not just like this big moment, it's all these little things that add up. And Seinfeld really digs into those, really digs into the minutia that we all go through on a daily basis. Now, whether that is, are we all getting ourselves into hilarious situations like them? No, but I think just the content is so relatable.
All right, thanks, Brian. Let's get back to some facts and trivia now. I got us a few more fun tidbits to share. I'm always big on the numbers stuff. Whenever I could find numbers, I really like to read those types of stats. But here's some more. All right, the show's often repeated phrase, yada yada yada, was ranked number 1 in TV Guide's list of TV's top 20 catchphrases. And that was a 2005 issue of TV Guide. Director Steven Spielberg once commented that filming Schindler's List, he got really depressed. So basically, he would end up watching tapes of Seinfeld to cheer himself up. And that's according to IMDb. Jerry reportedly says, "Hello, Newman," 17 times in the entire series. I can't believe it's that little. I actually thought it might have been like 30 times, but I wonder who goes through and counts all that stuff. The puffy shirt used in the episode The Puffy Shirt is currently placed in the Smithsonian. Also, a lot of people who bought the 5th season DVD set, they got a little doll-sized replica of that shirt, and I actually own that shirt, little replica. It's so cool. I love it. And finally, another fun little number stat. Michael Richards makes his first sliding Kramer entrance in episode 3. It's called The Robbery. And then he did it another 284 times by the time the show ended. That's quite a lot of sliding into the room. And I wonder, like I said, who counts these things? Regardless, I'm glad whoever took the time to do it. I think it's fun to find out how many times these things have happened. And whether you like Seinfeld or not, I think it really has a huge impact on pop culture and on the history of television and just on society in general, because there's so many people who make Seinfeld references, and it's just awesome. And I think Seinfeld is just a super popular show because it's so relatable, as kind of Brian Milonas alluded to earlier in this episode. But let's go through and find out some other people's opinions on Seinfeld. So now we're going to go to our polls from Twitter, in which I asked people, who is your favorite Seinfeld main character? And of course, the choices are the 4 main characters, Jerry, George, Elaine, and Kramer. And no surprise, really. I mean, I was surprised that it was kind of a big gap between George and Kramer, but I thought it was definitely going to be one or the other who was going to win. And it turned out I was right. George won with 41% of the vote. There was a total of 294 votes in this particular poll. Jerry finished with 18%. Elaine finished last with 11%, even though she's wonderful in my opinion. She should have gotten more votes. And Kramer finished second with 30%. And like I said, I was really surprised that there's such a big gap between George and Kramer. That's an 11% gap right there. So It is what it is, but they're both such great characters. Now let's go to people's comments on this poll and see what they had to say specifically, why they might have voted how they voted, because a lot of people have reasons for having a certain favorite character. All right, we start off with at Dr. KZVOSKY66. Anything George is gold. Favorite is when he sleeps with the cleaning lady. Was that wrong? Should I not have done that? At JMels1323, George was great, but Kramer made things interesting. I have to go Kramer. At Zach Donegan, the answer has to be George. There is no character in history like George Costanza. And I have to agree, he is such a unique character. At Wolves of EXODIA, George, the situations he gets himself in are hilarious. It's even funnier when it's his fault, like Festivus. At WWF_Axe, George had pathos and was acted to perfection. His timing, tonality, facial expressions. Jason Alexander put on a masterclass of comedy with George. I have to agree, it was acted to perfection, that role. At Jakenheimer, close call between Kramer and George. For me, I had to go with Kramer. He's put me on my side too many times. That's a shame. This person, at Citizen_Rick, he voted Jerry. He was the most subtle in all of his horribleness. At JDHoop702, my favorite is when Jerry is upset. His voice when he yells cracks me up. Yeah, it gets really high-pitched. I love it too. At MPierce6, early seasons George, late seasons Elaine, when she started resenting the fact that these guys were her only friends. She was the funniest. Finally, some love for Elaine. She's just gold. At PAPOBROMANZ, this is an actual tough one. Can't choose. And at NJURICAN861, for me, it's Jerry. All wonderful choices. I loved all these answers. And yeah, it's like so hard to choose. And I'm not going to give away my choice because there's so much to say about Seinfeld. I cannot contain it in this one episode. So I'm sure I'll be doing future Seinfeld content even on my own channel. So I just can't get into all of my personal favorites. I kind of want to touch more on you guys' favorites in this episode. We just want to give some love to Seinfeld in general. It doesn't matter how the love is there or what specifically we talk about. We just kind of want to delve in and really bask in the nostalgic glory of this wonderful 90s show. All right. And also, before we move on to our favorite supporting character, let's hear who Brian Milonas' favorite character is and if he ended up agreeing with the results of the poll, which was George. Let's see what he has to say.
My favorite main character of the show is George. I think George is actually probably the most complex. Like, at the surface, you should hate George. Like, George Costanza is not a good human being. He lies. He's deceitful. He just does bad things. He's not particularly good at anything. He's not all that smart. But to me, I love him. He's he's the best. I think he's the most complex. There's no logical reason why you should like the George Costanza character, but you do. And I think Jason Alexander is incredible bringing that character to life. But yeah, I love George and all the stuff he gets himself mixed up in. And if he would just make the right decision, once in a while, maybe he wouldn't find himself in those situations.
And now we move on to our favorite Seinfeld supporting character. Now, this character could be anyone as long as they're not the main four characters. So essentially that leaves you open to so many characters. It could be a one-off appearance, or it could be someone who is sporadically on every now and then. Somebody who comes to mind right away is Newman, because I think, this is the one favorite I'll give away that's mine. I love Newman. He's my favorite. So here's the poll results from Twitter. Frank Costanza won, and of course Frank Costanza was George Costanza's father, and Frank was played by Jerry Stiller, and I love Jerry Stiller. Oh, I'm so sad that he's passed away. Of course, if you think that name sounds familiar, it's because it's Ben Stiller's father, and he has had a long history in comedy, and he's just amazing in every way, and gosh, the world just misses him. It sucks that he's gone. Now let's jump back to the poll real quick and look at those results one more time. As I said, Frank Costanza won. Newman came in second, and there was a total of 91 votes, so not as many votes in this poll, but still quite a few. Frank finished first with 51% specifically, Newman second with 31%, Jay Peterman third, I love him, with 11%, and 7% said other, and they wrote a lot of comments on, who their other favorite characters were. And before we get to that, let's jump over and hear again from Brian Milonas about who his favorite secondary character was.
Favorite side character is tough, Frank Costanza. I love the Costanza family. Frank Costanza is really incredible. But I guess when I think of like true side characters, people who, have made sporadic appearances, I really think of Jack Klompus. There's this scene, and I laugh about it with my old podcast partner, Mike Crockett, where Jack Klompus becomes the condo board president, and he does like this, just presentation of himself. Jack Klompus is so funny. The Penn, all the way back to like the Penn episode, all the way through till the Del Boca Vista, being voted condo board president or helping impeach Morty Seinfeld. Jack Klompus, awesome.
That is such a great and unique choice, Brian. I love that one. Great pick there. Now let's go back to Twitter to see what people commented as their other favorite main characters. Right off the bat, we've got a shout out for Frank Costanza again. Then we've got a Newman. Someone's shouting out Putty, Jay Peterman, George's dad, of course, he won the vote. Serenity Now! So obviously another vote for Frank Costanza there. Putty, can't go wrong with Patrick Warburton. He is the OG live action Tick after all. Yeah, that's right. I can't do his voice. God, he's got such a unique, specific voice. Serenity Now! Again, we've got another shout out for Frank. That was such a great episode, the Serenity Now episode. What took you so long? And then we've got a shout out from my boy Newman. That's my favorite, like I said. Another Putty. All signs point to yes. Then we've got George's mom or dad for sure. Thank goodness George's mom is getting some love here too, because she was acted to perfection. Just casted quite perfectly. And then we come right back around, again with Frank Costanza. These were all wonderful choices. I love that most people were just kind of cementing the fact that they wanted Frank in the comments. They were leaving just funny gifs and quotes that were said by Frank. But we did have a few others, so that was some nice comments there. And now, we're going into some deeper category that I think is harder to pick from. For instance, we've got the Seinfeld favorite quote poll coming up here. And this is difficult because there's so many amazing and great Seinfeld quotes. I mean, it's really honestly quite hard to pick just one. And I always like to kind of reference Seinfeld a lot in my everyday life. So there's many times just randomly in a day that I will pull out some of these quotes and just say them out of nowhere for no reason at all. And it's just because it's such a quotable show, and that just kind of tells you how well written it was, that literally 20 plus years later, we're still saying these same lines. And they didn't really age or anything like that, which I find kind of telling as well. All right, now let's get to the quote poll. All right, let's see what won. Now, I gave a few choices, but I also had one of the choices as other, because again, you cannot limit yourself to 4 choices like Twitter only lets you list. You have to leave an other in there because there's like billions of these Seinfeld quotes that someone could technically choose as their favorite, so that's why I had to put other. So what won out of the choices I provided was Serenity Now. There was a total of 144 votes. Serenity Now, like I said, won with 31% of that vote. The Jerk Store came in second with 28% of the vote. And Yada 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 came in third at 22% of the vote. And last, people were shouting out other quotes in the comments, and that got 19% of the vote. Again, there were so many wonderful quotes. And before we go to those other quotes that people left in the comments, let's first hear from Brian Milonas about his very favorite Seinfeld quote.
I gotta go with a quote. I'm gonna give you a quote. I gotta give you a quote from my favorite character, George Costanza, and that quote is, "It's not a lie if you believe it."
Again, Milonas has had some great answers throughout this episode, so I appreciate him giving his choice for his favorite Seinfeld quote. Now let's go to the Twitter users who gave their other favorite Seinfeld quotes. And there's so many good ones that people shouted out, so can't wait to read these. Alright, we're starting off with at RHPot92. George likes his chicken spicy. You know, when George was referring to himself in the third person. Love that episode. And you want to be my latex salesman. That's a great one too. We've got the contest. I'm master of my domain. Then we have a George divided against itself cannot stand. Such a good one. My good friend at Take the Bump Pod said, well, my favorite Seinfeld quote, George saying, "They were all Twix. It was a setup." I can't do a good George yelling impersonation, but he always yells. Of course, Kramer, "You're an anti-dentite." "Worlds are colliding." Another George Costanza quote. "As I rained blows upon him, I realized there had to be another way." Another George Costanza quote. "I'll see you in hell, Costanza." "The sea was angry that day, my friends, like an old man trying to send back soup in a deli." That's, of course, George Costanza again. "Moles, Freckles' ugly cousin." That's from Deej Kirkby on Twitter. "I'm out." Of course, that's Kramer when he loses the contest, and he's the first one out, essentially. And that's from at FreeBird316, bird spelled B-Y-R-D. "You double-dipped the chip." And I'll go a step further and say, I love when he says, "Just take one dip and end it." I love that part. Oh my god. At DHancock110. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I use that one all the time in real life. I really do. I always use that one. At Raw Mopar Fan. "You got 3 pints of Kramer in ya, buddy." I can't do the Pop's mouth, but yeah. Pop's mouth at Jerry. Michael says, "I was in the pool." "She's bald, Jerry. Bald." At Krasinski RJ. "Well, the jerk store called and they are running out of you." That's a classic George line. Yada, yada, yada. That's also a famous episode and a very iconic line, as we heard about earlier from TV Guide's top countdown list of their top catchphrases. "Serenity now." "Well, hello. La, la, la." Of course, this is the voice that Jerry's girlfriend starts to hate, and he's like pretending her stomach has a voice. "Hello." I can't do it very well, but it's amazing. I love that voice, and I love the hello. At Deuce McHenry. "These pretzels are making me thirsty." And like, of course, it's said all kinds of different ways throughout the whole episode, so you could literally say it a billion different ways. And I love how each character throughout the entire episode just says it like differently from each other. It's really hard, actually, if you're one person trying to say it differently, but they all manage to do it multiple times in the episode, and it's just truly, it's gold. Or as, you know, we'll hear later, "Gold, Jerry, gold." That's, of course, another famous quote. When they're talking about, you know, Ovaltine. Why do they call it Ovaltine? The tin's round. Why don't they call it Roundtine? So great. Oh my gosh. Pennypacker. Newman. That's one of my favorite quotes, too. Just how Jerry scornfully says Newman. Love it. Dave says, "It's a Festivus miracle." At Spee's Benchmark. "No soup for you." Of course, Soup Nazi. I love Soup Nazi. Kenny? Kenny! And that's the Kenny Rogers Roasters episode, and I, like, know that entire episode so well. And, like, it's such a whimpering Kenny that Kramer says, and it's, like, when the light turns off, and he finds out that, like, Kenny Rogers Roasters is, like, closed, and he's all upset about it. So, Kenny? Kenny! I just can't even do it justice, but it's incredible. Alright, this is a good one here. "You know, Darren, if you would have told me 25 years ago that someday I'd be standing here about to solve the world's energy problems, I would have said you're crazy. Now let's push this giant ball of oil out the window." And this is such a great episode, actually. It's such a great Kramer-centric episode. And there's someone else who actually enjoys it besides me. And there's so many other great quotes that come from Kramer subplots that we've seen with people shouting out other Kramer lines. But there's just so many good Kramer stories throughout about the run of Seinfeld. Let's go to Brian Milonas one more time and hear his favorite Kramer subplots.
Kramer, he had so many subplots. Like, I've always loved the reoccurrence of themes with him, like with the make your own pizza restaurant, which was something that I want to say came up in like season 1 or season 2, and then carried through for a number of seasons where he just kept bringing up this idea. But I think the best Kramer subplot is Kramerica Industries, where he actually gets like New York University to send him an intern. And he's like, line 1 is his phone, line 2 is Jerry's phone. They're going to do the oil test at Play Now with George, where they push a giant ball of oil out a window. But yeah, Kramerica Industries, such an awesome episode. And it also is the episode where you get hello.
All right, we're back now. Let's look at some more Twitter comments here about favorite quotes. At Bomber O Weech, sweet fancy Moses. Use this pretty much every day. Mike, George calls Jerry. George rants about something. Jerry replies, "Who is this?" That's a good one. Very dismissive. Love dismissive Jerry. Oh, that's a shame. And this one's another favorite of mine. LAD says, "Jambalaya!" And that's, of course, Newman as he runs out the Soup Nazi store when, basically you can only get his stuff for a very little bit longer. And it's also just hard to get stuff there. So, "Jambalaya!" And he runs away and scurries like a little chipmunk. I love it. And lastly, this is one of my favorites too. It's a Frank Costanza line. "You want a piece of me?" And that's probably the most famous Seinfeld blooper, is Frank Costanza, played by Jerry Stiller, trying to say that line, and Elaine, or Julia, the actual actress who plays Elaine, just cracking up laughing. She can't get through it. If you guys haven't seen the blooper, I'm sure if you're a Seinfeld fan, you have seen it, but Google it, or look it up on YouTube. The clips are out there, and it's so funny. It's like 10 minutes long, it feels like, because they just keep doing take after take, and she just keeps laughing. And George is there too, and he laughs as well, or Jason Alexander in real life, of course. So they all are just having such a big laugh, and they just can't get through it because Jerry Stiller is so flipping funny and incredible and amazing, and again, the world will miss him. So now that we said a few of those quotes, I kind of want to add in like 2 or 3 favorites here. All right, so nobody said this, and it's really kind of, it's really not well-known quote or anything, or a very famous quote, but I love this particular episode, and I love just Kramer going on and on about the pig man. So this is my favorite quote here. "Oh God, it's a pig man!" And he runs out of the hospital door. "It's a pig man!" I can't do it good, but it's so incredible. Oh God, it's the greatest quote ever. And that episode is just a gem. And actually, I just found probably the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life today. So I was kind of trying to watch some Seinfeld clips this morning to prepare for this video. And one of the clips that I came across it wasn't like a real Seinfeld clip. It was somebody who made like a trailer for a movie called The Pig Man starring Kramer, and he mashed up not just stuff from this particular episode where Kramer's talking about the pig man, but he mashed up stuff from all kinds of Seinfeld episodes, and it was so dramatic and ridiculous and crazy, and oh my God, I flippin' loved it, and I laughed and I almost cried. And I'm going to include the link in the description here on this YouTube video because you have to see it if you enjoy Seinfeld in general. Even if your favorite episode isn't the one about the pig man, it doesn't matter. You'll love this trailer. It's so funny. So please check it out. Check out the description below for the link when this is done. It's really going to be worth your time. I promise you. I felt like I found something really special today when I stumbled upon that video, and I was like, I've got to share this with people. It was just too good. All right, and so my other shout out for a quote is really not just like a quote, it's more of like a whole song or scene. So it's where George is sitting at home and Jerry's calling him, but George lets the answering machine pick up, and of course it's his little answering machine song. "Believe it or not, George isn't at home. Please leave a message at the beep. I must be out or I'd pick up the phone. Where could I be? Believe it or not, I'm not home." That's a terrible rendition, but I love that song. It's such a gem. And there's so many other George related like subplots that are just gold and yield so many special lines and special moments that just make you cry, really. Like, I can recall one where he's like running and like the birds fly away, and that happens in 2 different episodes where he's thinking outside, like in the park or something. I can't remember where he is, and I think he's at the pier, actually, and then he runs and like the birds fly away, and that happens twice. There's just so many great gold George moments, again, just like with Kramer, like I mentioned earlier. And a specific George moment that I love has to do, much like the quote I just said, it has to do with an answering machine, but it's not somebody calling up George. It's someone calling Jerry and leaving a message on his voice machine about George. So we're going to go to Brian Milonas, who's going to tell us more about his favorite George subplots, including he'll reference that little message on Jerry's answering machine. Here we go.
I think there's so many with George. The quintessential George Costanza. This George subplot really epitomizes who George Costanza is as a human being, and that's when he locks his keys in the car at the Yankee Stadium parking lot, and he's being seen so little. Like, he's so bad at his job. Him not actually being in the office is helping him advance his career, and that's because his car is parked there all the time. So when people come in the morning, he's the first one there. When people leave at night, it looks like he's still there burning the midnight oil, when in reality this guy is not even going to work. He takes the vacation with Susan while the car is still there, and Jerry and Kramer have to go pull the flyers off and get the car cleaned, and then they get in an accident. And because they don't know where George is, nobody get a hold of him. And again, no cell phones. George Steinbrenner thinks George Costanza's dead. Even calls his parents. The voicemail, the voicemail that Frank Costanza leaves for Jerry about George is dead. Call me back. Like, is just incredible. That scene where Jerry listens to that voicemail literally will put me in tears over how funny it is. And then when you think about George Steinbrenner showing up to tell the Costanzas that their son is indeed dead, and Frank Costanza's first response to George Steinbrenner was, "Why did you trade Jay Buhner? You had a rocket for an arm." But that to me, everything, it epitomizes everything that George Costanza is. He's such a failure and such a loser in life that he actually finally makes headway in his career while not actually attending his job.
Damn, is that a great episode. It really is so good. As Milonas kind of indicated, there's just so many special moments, and it just shows you how bad of a person George is really all around, and how like crummy he is at his job, and it's just Seinfeld perfection, in my opinion. So let's go back to one last poll that I put out on Twitter, and this one I'm really excited about because it's about Seinfeld food bits, and there's actually quite a lot of food references throughout all of Seinfeld. I mean, if you think about it, it's just insane the amount of different food that they reference, and candy, and all kinds of things, and even drinks too, because there's drink references as well. But I gave viewers basically 4 specific choices. Of course, the 4th one is other, so that they could write in their choice if it wasn't listed, and we'll go through those as well. So let's take a look. All right. So, of course, there was Eclair in the Trash, Big Salad, Kenny Rogers Chicken Roaster, of course I mentioned that earlier, fat-free yogurt that really wasn't fat-free, the Marble Rye, Ovaltine, Bosco, Muffin Tops, cereal, Snapple. There's literally so many. I mean, it's insane. But the 3 choices I gave were the Junior Mint, Soup from the Soup Nazi episode, Pez, because of the Pez dispenser, which is classic, and then, of course, other, like I said, and people gave other choices in their comments. And this only had a total of 96 votes, but that's still a decent amount of votes, in my opinion. And so, let's see what people voted. Number 1. It was Soup at 63%, because everyone loves the Soup Nazi episode. Then we've got the Junior Mint coming in second at 14%. And third actually was other, because there were so many votes for other food favorites. And then last, we got the Pez, which was part of the Pez dispenser, which is a favorite of mine. And I know it's a favorite of my friend Trace, so that one holds a special place. Let's go to the comments. All right, starting off with my friend Jim. He says he loves the Chinese gum that was obtained only by Lloyd Braun and who's definitely not crazy. Then we go to Jake, and he says George eating food in bed with a lady. Of course, we've got a soup vote here. No soup for you. We've got Take the Bump Pod saying candy lineup with the Twix. He also mentioned that earlier in our other poll, so he really loves the Twix episode. Then we've got at Cow Riot shouting out the Marble Rye. Shut up, you old bag, when Jerry steals it from her. Oh my god, I love that. At _Talkomania, that's delicious. It's a perfectly sane food to eat. Kramer eating the hot dog at the Alex Theater. That's a good one too. Kelly says, I still have to go with the double dip chip. Yeah, that's a classic to me too. Like I said, take one dip and end it. I don't know why I exaggerate it so much, but I like doing that. George in the Twix bar from the dealership. We've got another for that. Oh no, Twix is the only candy with the cookie crunch. Kind of expanding on his little Twix vote there. And the Miking experience says, I do the Junior Mint and the pretzels one with my kids all the time. So he obviously quotes that in real life a lot. And there's a lot of Seinfeld stuff I quote too, like I was saying. It's so fun. It's a tie for Raw Mopar fan. It's a tie for him between the peaches, Drake's coffee cakes, and the big salad. Honorable mention to the turkey sandwich and when George ate that onion. Oh, I love that when he eats the onion and he doesn't know it's an onion. And here we go. I referenced it earlier. That's gold, Jerry, gold. And of course, like I said, it's all about the Ovaltine versus the roundtine. So it does have to do with food. Well, and drinks. And then muffin tops. Oh, I love the pop the top and you toss the stump. That's it for our polls. I hope you guys enjoyed the results and found it interesting. I hope you loved hearing some favorite quotes again from other people. And, look out because I'll be covering this more one day in the faraway future because there's just so much to delve into and remember about Seinfeld that you can't just cover it in one flippin' episode, as I mentioned earlier. And I often wonder, what would Seinfeld be like if it was around on TV with new episodes today? Would it hold up? I'm sure it would obviously change to reflect the times. I also asked Brian Milonas what he thought Seinfeld would look like if it was on TV today. Let's hear what he had to say.
It's funny, the situations that they get themselves into themselves. I mean, the advent of the cell phone eliminates so many of those situations. But I think when you're thinking about Seinfeld, that they could absolutely take, what we face today. Like I think of, what we're going through with the pandemic and quarantining and all that good stuff. Like there's so much they could do with the material. And that's because they took the problems of the day and the things that people face every day, and they really incorporated that into the show. If the show were around today, they would take the problems that we all face today and they would incorporate those. I can envision, in the pandemic, Kramer trying to, bust into Jerry's apartment like he always does, and the door is locked, and then just, he keeps sliding into the door or something, But, I think the advent of the cell phone ruins a lot of the plots, but they'd adjust if they were around.
So many people are doing reunion specials during COVID, like they're doing like virtual reunion specials. It would be pretty amazing to get a Seinfeld one because they'd have so much funny things to say in character. I would love to see how they would do that. And I like how Brian had a specific idea of what Kramer would be doing trying to get into Jerry's apartment. I think that was a great little scenario that I could actually see happening on the show for sure. It totally matches the characters. And it would be interesting just to see what the writers would come up with about COVID jokes and stuff. And the situational stuff would be gold, Jerry, gold. And I know I've been quoting that a lot, but that's probably my top quote that I say the most. It's not necessarily my favorite, I just happen to say it all the time. Because it's just the most applicable, at least to me. Because whenever somebody says something I like, or I find something I like, I'm like, that's gold! Whoever's name, insert here, and then pause, and then say, gold! All right, so we kind of talked a lot about Seinfeld, but now I want to go to something that I'm going to be doing every episode, not just this episode. This is going to be a recurring thing. So yes, the topics will change in this series Outside the Ropes, but what will stay the same is my weekly award, and it's going to be called the Golden Glow Award. And yes, you've heard of the Golden Globes, but what are the Golden Glow Awards? Well, it's my pick for a woman who shines, a woman who inspires, and a woman who lifts other people up. And it's just basically a strong woman, an important woman figure, and it could be anybody from any medium. Some days it will be wrestlers, because there's still a lot of women wrestlers that I respect and love and admire. And just because I'm not really as into wrestling now doesn't mean I've stopped admiring these types of people. So wrestlers, like I said, actresses, writers, directors, even some female characters that are so strong we're going to touch on. Real life women, not just actresses and all that. Just regular old, strong, important, revolutionary women we're going to talk about as well in the future. Even politicians. Yeah, there's some bad ones out there, but there's some great ones. And so I'm excited to highlight a different woman every week and to give my Golden Glow Award to someone new each episode. So look out for that. But we're going to go to the very first winner. I'm excited to announce who it is. The very first recipient of the Golden Glow Award goes to dun 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 dun, Julia Louis-Dreyfus. I love her. And because we're talking Seinfeld, I was like, okay, how can I not give it to her? She is so special. I just think she's so funny. As a woman comedian, being a woman comedian is not easy. It's kind of like a male-dominated world in comedy. Now, it's gotten less like that these days, but especially in the 90s, she really stuck out and she shined. You kind of notice that that theme here, shining, glowing, inspiring, twinkling. That's kind of like my idea is these women are luminaries and really, really, really shining and important. At least in my eyes. She's a breast cancer survivor, and she's an advocate for women and universal health care and other things as well. I just really respect her a lot. She's smart, charismatic, and of course witty and funny. Obviously, as we've seen on Seinfeld, she shines in her role as Elaine, and her glow was never diminished despite being the only female lead on the show. And she always held her own while sharing the screen with 3 other strong actors. And quite a few times she even stole the spotlight with Stella! The little kicks. I love her terrible little kicks. When she said, I've yada yada sex. I say it's a peach. And she's got the cigar in her mouth. And so many other instances, she just stole the episode. For sure. I love her. She's the only woman to win an acting award for 3 separate comedy series, winning Emmy Awards for her roles in Seinfeld, The New Adventures of Old Christine, and Veep. And she's also won a total of 7 times. And of course, that's Emmys. She's won other awards too. She's just a fantastic woman, someone to look up to, and someone I've always admired. So, hope you guys enjoyed the first recipient of the Golden Glow Award. I can't wait to highlight more women in the future. And, I kind of want to end the episode tying it back in with Seinfeld. I can't wait to talk more pop culture with you guys. Remember to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you find out when Belle to Bells is releasing new interviews with women wrestlers, when they're getting new content up on their YouTube channel. I don't want you guys to miss it, so hit that bell, like I said. And let's tie it back to Seinfeld, like I said, and end with Brian Milonas' favorite Seinfeld episodes. Take it away, Brian.
Yeah, it's tough picking favorite episodes. I mean, I think the ones you think of, like the puffy shirt. I think you think of the soup Nazi. I love the marine biologist. I mean, if you're a Seinfeld fan, I mean, you know the quote, the sea was angry that day, my friends. My personal favorite top Seinfeld episode, though, is the Merv Griffin episode where Kramer climbs into a garbage bin, then pulls out the old Merv Griffin set, and then just hosts a talk show in his living room. He has Jim Fowler on. For some reason, he helped raise Jim Fowler's kids, and that's also the episode where Jerry has a girlfriend, and he keeps feeding her turkey and red wine so she pass out and he can play with her vintage toy collection. I love that entire episode. As a matter of fact, I tried to get a themed episode of my old podcast, the WPAN, with Mike Crockett. I wanted to do an episode called Scandals and Animals, and Mike wouldn't do it. So maybe I'll bring back a podcast and call it Scandals and Animals.
I had so much fun talking Seinfeld with you guys. And again, this is just a little tidbit of the topic. I know we couldn't go into a deep, deep dive. There's just not enough time in the day. But don't worry, I'll revisit this topic again one day. If you want to catch my other content, please give me a follow at SuperKickingIt on Twitter, SuperKickingIt. I stream on Twitch on Thursday nights at 8 p.m. Central and on Sundays at 2 p.m. Central. Please check me out there. You can find me at twitch.tv/SuperKickingIt, spelled the same way as my Twitter handle. And again, I can't say it enough, subscribe to Belle to Bells, please. It's important to support women wrestlers, women journalists, and just there's a lot of good people there behind the scenes. Special thanks again to Kristen and Warren, and special thanks to you guys for watching this video today. Appreciate it. Please drop a like, and until next time, that's it for me. See ya!